welcome you all here today on this beautiful morning. On behalf of Dr. David Anderson, Dr. Eileen Denevan-Wright, and the entire Faculty of Medicine to Breakthrough Breakfast. This is our third quarterly breakfast since we relaunched this popular research event earlier this year. It's our goal with these events to inform and inspire you, and to consider how you might contribute to the world of medical research, to inform our broader community about the exciting things going on at DAL and with all of our health partners that they might not even be aware of. That Atlantic Canada is leading in a number of areas, and it's a very exciting opportunity and resource for our community. We hope that you find these events meaningful and that you continue to participate. You're always welcome to provide feedback. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging that Pier 21 is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. We also recognize the histories, contributions, and legacies of the African Nova Scotian people who have been here for over 400 years. Ben Franklin once said, "In this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes." Indeed, death is part of the circle of life that cannot be avoided, but today we are going to hear some of the latest research into the factors that influence how well or poorly we might age. So how well we might live. How can we influence that? Before we introduce our keynote speakers today, I'd like to extend my sincerest thanks to our generous sponsors. Starting with our gold sponsors, Shanex. Shanex is leading the way to a healthier future for aging adults. Their recent gift of $3.5 million to 3 universities in Atlantic Canada, including Dalhousie, is an investment in research, programs, and education in this area. Shanex is a family-owned organization that started serving this community in 1988 with just one single nursing home. And Shanex now offers the full continuum of services for seniors in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Ontario. And we're so pleased to have them here today. Our silver sponsors, the QE2 Health Sciences Center Foundation. Where's the QE2? There they are. The QE2 Foundation inspires generosity to advance healthcare through the QE2. The QE2, as you all know, is a healthcare hub for Atlantic Canadians, and by working together with people who share a vision for better health, the foundation strengthens care delivered at the QE2, improving the health and lives of Atlantic Canadians. And our bronze sponsors, Cape Breton University. Let's hear it for Cape Breton University. We are so pleased to have our Cape Breton University colleagues here with us today. Cape Breton University is proud to be partnering with Dalhousie to bring the Cape Breton Medical Campus for the first set of students to be accepted. We anticipate August of 2025. This strategic partnership will ensure more Nova Scotians have the opportunity to receive an excellent medical education in their home province and even in their home community. It will assist with recruitment and retention of physicians for that area and will have a focus on rural Nova Scotians. With this focus on family medicine and rural medicine, Cape Breton Medical Campus will provide training that will greatly benefit the health needs of the many communities of Nova Scotians, including Indigenous and African Nova Scotian communities. Cape Breton University is also, tying into today's theme, the home of a Center of Excellence for Healthy Aging. The support of these sponsors makes events like this possible at Dalhousie, and it helps to fuel medical research and innovation that is truly making a difference for the people in our communities. A big hand for our sponsors. In addition, I'd like to give a special warm welcome to the Alzheimer's Society, the Berkeley and our healthcare partners from Nova Scotia Health, who've all come out in force today to support this lovely event. For a little housekeeping, please continue to enjoy your breakfast as we go through our presentations. The catering team will continue to move about the room and help ensure that you have everything you need. We will be hearing from 3 outstanding speakers who are working on the front lines of geriatric research and clinical care. We will hear from Dr. Susan Howlett, whose research focuses on the impact of frailty on heart health and the differences between male and female aging. We will hear from Dr. Kenneth Rockwood, a global leader in frailty and dementia research who has shaped the field of geriatric medicine. And from Dr. Pamela Jarrett, a geriatrician and researcher whose contributions in dementia care and transitions in care for older adults are transforming the way we support our aging populations. Each of our speakers today will be presenting for approximately 10 minutes, and I've been told I'm the timekeeper. So to our speakers, if you see me waving, you're running out of time. We need to keep ourselves on a tight schedule because we are aiming to have you hear about these exciting researchers and then have some time for questions and answers at the end. So our question and answer period will be hosted by Catherine McPherson, the COO of Shanix and a director on Dalhousie's Board of Governors. Now let's begin with our first speaker, Dr. Susan Howlett, Professor of Pharmacology and Geriatric Medicine. Dr. Howlett's research reveals the link between frailty and age-related changes in heart function. She's made key discoveries on how sex hormones regulate these processes. She has pioneered the measurement of frailty in aging animals and humans, I believe, with the Frailty Index, a major advance that will help translate scientific discoveries in aging research into meaningful clinical interventions. Susan.
Yes, this is my slide advancer. Good morning. It's a great honor to be here to talk to you today about my work. And I guess I'll start just a little bit about myself. So I'm originally from Montreal. And when I grew up there in the 60s and early 70s, there weren't a lot of people encouraging girls to study science and maths. But my dad, who's 92 years young, and he's an engineer, he saw that I was the kind of person who liked to take things apart and try to put them back together again with no extra pieces. And he really encouraged that in me. And he taught me to solder, and he taught me to look through Scientific American when I was way too young to read that. And really kind of inspired me to, take that curiosity about how things work and to take up a career in science. So I've done that, and I've continued in this really interesting career to be able to ask questions about how things work and to try to learn new things that can hopefully inform medical discoveries and help in human health. And so I had been in my work using old mice to model human aging, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. I have done a lot of work on male-female differences, which is a huge issue. I'm not going to focus on that today, talking more about some of our discoveries in terms of aging and frailty. Okay. And I guess I am a cardiovascular researcher, and that's where I have started my career. And I was interested in the fact that there are male-female differences in cardiovascular disease. And this slide shows the incidence of cardiovascular disease, sorry, is that okay? In the population in men and women. And what you can see here is although there are differences between the sexes, the major risk factor for developing cardiovascular disease is age. So if you get older, you're much more likely to get a cardiovascular disease. And so I thought, well, everybody was doing experiments, mostly male animals, and don't get me started on that, but also using older mice to model cardiovascular diseases, because that's where the diseases happen. And so when I had these mice in my lab, this is a young C57 black 6 mouse, and it looks all sort of sleek and cute. I think so, anyway. And then we had older mice, and we looked at them, and we saw that they had little deficits. What you can see here, little curvature of the spine in one of them, and they have some patchy fur loss. And we thought, these mice, some of them look quite old for their age, and others were really quite frisky. And so we thought, they age at different rates. So we had mice, about a 2-year-old mouse, if we look at one, is approximately like about a 70 or 75-year-old person. And so by the time, if you've ever been to a high school reunion, you'll know that people age at different rates. And so we saw this happen with mice. And so this is a UK sign, and it's a sign of how many people might think about aging. I think it's pretty awful. And I tend to take inspiration from people like this woman. So in 2023, 96-year-old Regine Fairhead set a 5-kilometer record for women 95 plus in Ottawa, and that's the world record. But the thing that really impresses me about her is that she actually got a trainer and took it seriously the next year, and she shaved 7 minutes off her time. So she actually really, took this seriously. And so obviously people age at different rates. And some are fit, and others are frail. And so how's frailty measured? Well, I thought maybe the mice are frail. And working with Ken Rockwood, who had come up with this idea many years ago, like more than 20 years ago, that you could measure the degree of frailty in people with a frailty index made up of health deficits. And the idea is that you can measure frailty by counting the number of deficits in a person. You have a list of, say, 50 items, and then the total number is 50. If the person has 25, their frailty index is 0.5. And the reason that I knew about this tool that was used in humans is because some of you already know this, but Ken and I just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. So we did talk about this. So we've been married for a long time. And he said, well, can you do this with mice? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a veterinarian. So I did talk to our veterinarians. And we came up with a way to measure frailty based on all of these clinical problems in mice as well as to model people. And so this graph, which is data from my lab and also from humans, the black symbols are humans and the red are the mouse frailty. And you can see if we normalize the age as a percent of the maximum lifespan, that mice and humans appear to be accumulating deficits or frailty at about the same rate. So where do these deficits come from? This is kind of a schematic, which is on the outer ring in blue is all the different mechanisms that are things that we can measure in the lab that are thought to give rise to rapid aging and frailty. And it's thought that all of these different processes can start to go awry, and they can start to lead to different types of diseases. And so I have looked at chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is something that is seen with aging. And acute inflammation is what happens when you get sick and you're able to fight off infections and things. But chronic inflammation can actually start to damage your organs. And so I've looked at the relationship between chronic inflammation and aging in mice. And working with a really brilliant postdoc in my lab from Australia, Alice Kane, we actually measured in males and females. This shows the level of markers of chronic inflammation. And what you can see is that in females, one called interleukin-6 or IL-6 is increasing with the degree of frailty. And in males, there's different inflammatory markers that increase with the degree of frailty. So we know that the frailest mice have the most inflammation, which then goes on to damage tissues. And so why is this important? Well, one thing about a mouse model is that you can actually tweak things to see whether or not you can either, here we have a list of things that promote fitness, like a balanced diet, calorie restriction, education, geroprotectors, which is a whole exciting new class of drugs. And we also have things we know that make frailty worse, like a high-fat diet, like too many drugs. So we looked at exercise, and we asked the question, if we take mice that are about 2 years old, so like about a 70-year-old, they've been hanging out in cages, not doing any exercise, and if we give them a chance to exercise, what happens? So here you see the frailty index versus time. So these are mice that took up an exercise program late in life, shall we say, and they took to it really well. They quite enjoyed it. And you can see that the mice, the symbols that are black in each case, those are the mice that exercised. And you can see that right away their frailty stopped increasing, especially the females. In fact, the females went down. So this suggests that there's a possibility to treat frailty. And so that's something that's really exciting and something that we're working on. This is work done with a really talented PhD student, Elise Bissett, and Scott Grandy, who I'll talk about in a second, who's an exercise physiologist at Dalhousie. And I have this arrow here because the females actually went down when they started to exercise, so they got less frail. They didn't just stop getting more frail. The males have some benefit too, so it's good for both. So what we've decided to do, and we've just received a $1 million grant from the River Phillip Foundation to do this, is we're going to put together a package. We know that lifting weights and protein supplements is helpful to increase strength, increase muscle mass, and inflammation. We know that it reduces frailty, or at least there's some fledgling evidence that this reduces frailty. We also know that blueberries, which are a delicious local food, reduce inflammation, and they help our bodies process dietary protein. And so we've developed this project called the Strong Intervention, where we're going to recruit people over the age of 65 who are at risk for cardiovascular disease. We're going to treat them with a combination of strength and endurance exercise, blueberries, and protein. And what we propose is that we're going to reduce frailty, we're going to improve their cardiovascular health, and then we're going to look at how this works in terms of markers of inflammation and maybe other markers of aging. And so this is a project with me, Ken Rockwood, Scott Grandy, who's the exercise physiologist, and Leah Cahill, who's a dietitian and also an epidemiologist. And so I'd just like to thank you, and I hope I didn't go over time. And I look forward to questions later.
Thank you, Susan. That was so interesting. I didn't mention, but yes, please do hold your questions until the Q&A after the event. And thank you so much for mentioning the generous gift from River Phillip. We'll be announcing that later this year. But it is so true that the power of philanthropy to really transform and invest in this exciting research is just an exciting opportunity. So now I'd like to invite to stage Dr. Kenneth Rockwood, Professor of Geriatric Medicine and Neurology, a global leader. He doesn't want me to introduce him. He's ready to go. He's going to introduce himself.
Let's get going.
All right.
Okay, so I was asked we should start by saying a few words about ourselves. I'm turning on a timer right now. And the reason for that is, the thing to know about me is I'm from Newfoundland. And the other thing to know is I grew up with my grandparents, including my mom's father, who was a fundamentalist, evangelical, Anglican clergyman from a long line of such. So I have the preaching gene. And I didn't want to waste time with other stuff. So let's just do a thing, because exercise is good. Why don't you try this? Put up your right hand if you have a parent now or have ever had a parent. Great, okay. Now, if I were to say to you, are the diseases of old age, is age important in the diseases of old age? If you think that's true, put up your hand. Most of you have. I didn't put my hand up because I would frame the question like this. Is aging important in the diseases of old age? And scientists, right, we split hairs. And the hair I'm splitting here is that the process of aging is something that happens to everybody throughout the life course. Now, technically, it doesn't start till about age 15. What happens prior to that is development. And the hair is split by, is the risk of death increasing at the age that you're at right now? And because of the impact of perinatal mortality, a child who's 30 minutes old now has to live till they're about 33 or 34 before they'll have the same risk of dying. So the risk of death starts to go up at about the age of 15, which makes the math convenient. Now, I know there's many financially astute people here, so this part is next for you, right? We've sorted out that more or less the rate of aging at things that you can detect clinically is about 4.5 to 5% per year. So all the financially astute people have gone, Rule 72, that means aging will double every 15 years, and you are correct. So think about it like this. When someone's 15 years old, they got basically nothing wrong with them. They have a little thing, but double that to 30 is still pretty much nothing wrong. And just like compound interest, the most important time is the last doubling time between the ages of 75 and 90. There is another one, 90 to 105. It won't be till about 2035 that will become more than a rounding error. So you think that we're in it now in healthcare, because in 2021, the leading edge of the baby boom began to turn 75. And so many of the things that you read and heard about, ambulance offload delay and need for more long-term care beds, and blah, 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 that's population aging. That is population aging playing out. And not only are we ill-prepared for it as a matter of public policy, which is on people like me who failed to articulate how much we need geriatricians and geriatrics and gerontological social workers and so on, all those skill sets that you need to manage the complexity of frailty in aging. We're also only at ground zero with a little bit more in terms of the science of aging. So you've heard about the exciting trial that we've got $1 million to start. Now, all good science raises more questions than it answers. But some of these questions we know about from the start. We know that they're going to be there. So the pitch that I would like to make, particularly to you financially astute folks, is get in now. Because what we would like to do is start to investigate some of the phenomena of aging itself and see how that is playing out. And does it play out equally well in everybody, regardless of their degree of fitness or frailty? And can we characterize people better than we can do right now with the clinical tests if we bring to bear some more objective instrumental tests? Now, we've got some of those in, but we need more because no one exactly knows how this is going to work. And it is certain, $100 billion bet that it won't be one thing. There'll be a bunch of things that are important. And so we need to start to get to grips with that. So we've got enough funds right now to do the study we set out to do. But that study can be used as a foundation. So if you put money in on top of that, you're coming in on a good foundation and we'll have a great return on investment. Because we want to start to look at the things that go along with aging itself. Now, one of the things that that's my 5-minute warning, good. So one of the things that we are very keen on as we look at this is this other question. What are we proposing for the intervention? Well, diet and exercise and a bit of social engagement and things like that. Well, who wouldn't do that, right? If I was a stroke doctor standing here, I'd tell stroke, you get a diet and exercise, blah, right? And I'm a dementia doctor, and I tell you, what's the key there? You get a diet, you get exercise, you get socially engaged, blah, blah, blah. Why it makes it so hard for people to do that? So some part of what we want to address with this work is to sort out, why don't people do this anyway? And what is the obstacle? And would the biomarker profiles help us understand how that works? Now, I can tell you that I am not a natural athlete. If you've ever seen me play anything at all, you know, no, not that guy. But I have been persuaded enough by the work that we've done to really invest in exercise and trying to eat as well as I can. I've got a terrible sweet tooth. But I am persuaded of the merit of that. And so it is possible to do. But is that because of some other genes that hitherto were unexplored? I don't know, but we're going to be able to start to look at these things. The rate of progress in the field of frailty right now is staggering. And so, for example, I'm part of a group that has a big paper, we hope, it's under review at a big journal, in which we've done genome-wide scanning of a properly characterized group of people in whom we've been able to sort out how frail they are based on this frailty index approach. And we've got some really interesting results that come out of that. Thanks to some philanthropic funding, we were able this summer to employ a brilliant young grad student who did what you think, well, everybody must know this, but it turns out we don't. We know there are biomarkers associated with dementia in late life. We think there are biomarkers associated with frailty in late life. How much do they overlap? No one knew that. It turns out the overlap is small, which means for the study we want to do, we're really going to go at this because this is prime opportunity to try and figure out how this works. We're going to measure both sets in this work that we want to go forward with. But as I say, you know, that costs money, and that's part of the reason that we're here. Actuarially, I am now coming towards the end of my career. We talk about the R word in my house a bit, you know, retirement. No, well, not right now. But I do understand that these things are in the offing. And it's made me somewhat less shy about talking to people about money. It's made me a little bit less shy, too, about you've heard that Dalhousie is a leader in this area. We absolutely are. So in 2019, there was, you know, there are firms and companies and whatnot that do things like rate how excellent a place is. And in 2019, we were ranked #1 in the world for frailty and aging. And #2 behind us was the US Veterans Administration with a budget about 4 orders of magnitude higher than what we have here. You can only sustain leadership for a certain period of time. And now in the latest ranking in 2023, we're in the top 15 or so. Why is that? Because everybody else has invested in this area, because it's so important. So we have an edge still. We have an edge in some very particular areas, including a really exciting project called the Physics of Frailty. I'm boring you with this because try and get Physics of Frailty work funded. You take it to the medical crowd at Kennedy Institute for Health Research, like, look at all the math, right? You know, I'm in medicine. If I could have done math, I'd be in engineering, as one student told me one time. And if you go to the National Science and Engineering Research Council, you go, math, I did like, you know, third-year engineering physics will take care of all of this. And it will, right? So we can build on that. And so that's the type of work that it's really important that philanthropists fund, because it's extremely important. It falls between a gap of how the public agencies work. And as you're trying to make that investment, think about working with a group that has done a lot with a comparative little. And that's the other part that I would make you know. This is a very worthwhile area for investment going forward, because there are staggeringly interesting things that are coming out of this. And I'll just give you a hint of the latest thing that we have got. Remember I said 75 to 90 is the last doubling time. Sorry, but that's actuarially true. Still people will live beyond that, but from an actuarial standpoint, that's because most people die between those ages. In Canada, that's when most people die, which is a huge accomplishment, right? It used to be that most people in Canada died between 40 and 50. So this is a huge benefit that we have. And the physics work has quite recently demonstrated pretty clearly at a systems basis just what's happening at around those ages. And it now gives us new probes, new insights, new ways to think about the way to approach this, new ways to frame the question, which in science is the hardest thing. In science, the hardest thing is to go from the generally good idea to the specifically testable hypothesis. And we now have a huge advantage from this quantitative work. So as I'm closing now, I want you to think about how important frailty is, because it's rapid aging, in a sense, how importantly it is impacting healthcare right now. And anyone wants to ask me the question why that is, I'd be happy to tell you. And the tantalizing idea that maybe now we can do something about it at the level of aging. Let me leave that with you. Thank you very much.
I had so many nice things to say about Ken, but I'll save them for later. Thank you so much. That was great. Very interesting. Our next presenter, our final presenter in person today, is Dr. Pamela Jarrett, Associate Professor of Medicine at Dalhousie University and based on our New Brunswick campus, and a geriatrician at the Horizon Health Network. Dr. Jarrett has devoted her career to improving care for older adults, especially those with dementia. Her research focuses on transitions in care for older adults, and she's recognized as a leader in geriatric research and policy. She has received numerous accolades, including the New Brunswick Lieutenant Governor's Award for Excellence in Aging in 2022, and was appointed to the Canadian Ministerial Advisory Board on Dementia in 2023. Please welcome Dr. Jarrett.
Good morning, and thank you very much for asking me to come and speak today. It's a real pleasure, and it's nice to be in a room with people again. It's given me a chance to come back to Halifax and visit a few old haunts when I went to Dal, and I will tell you that the parfait lemon pie at Le Bistro continues to be wonderful. So if you haven't tried it and you like lemon, you could consider that. I'm going to hopefully try and pull together for you some of what Sue and Ken have just talked about. And full disclosure, I started my fellowship in geriatric medicine. I'm a graduate of Dal Medical School and did my fellowship in internal medicine and geriatric medicine here. And Ken was my residency training director. And he asked me two questions very early on in my training. And one was, are you interested in research? And I said, no, I'm interested in caring for older adults. That's what I'm interested in. He said, okay. He said, and do you have a computer? And this was in 1992. I said, a computer? What would I need a computer for? So, anyway, I have the answers to those questions now, but he inspired me. So I'm going to go through some of this today. I'm going to talk a little bit about how can we promote healthy aging, and I'm going to talk a little bit about and how does frailty matter. Now, we've all talked a little bit about our parents growing up, and my dad was actually an administrator at a long-term care facility, and he started working there in the early 70s. I did not grow up with grandparents that lived close by, but I grew up in the family of that nursing home. And I spent most of my junior high and high school years working there. Started working in the store, started working as a personal support worker, and I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with the care, but every day I kept thinking, we've got to do this better. We've got to do this better. There's got to be a better way to do this. So here I am, 35 plus years later, still trying to make it better. We've made progress, but we still have a long way to go. And I think we can do it. And we owe it to society, we owe it to our families to do that. So I hope this inspires you, that there's lots we can do and there's lots we can improve. You've heard Ken and Sue talk about how our population is going to age. And I had a graph on these slides, and then yesterday I changed it around. And I thought, what's the best way to depict this? And this is just New Brunswick, and these are Stats Canada numbers, and it's population projections for people 75 years of age and older. So in New Brunswick in 2021, we had 72,000 people the age of 75 and older. By 2043, so a mere 22 years from now, that absolute number is going to double. But not only that, but we're going to see tripling of the number of people between the age of 85 and 94, and we're going to see tripling of the people 95 and older. And as Ken and Sue have said, it's as you age and the more people that are in those older age ranges, the more challenges we're going to have in our healthcare system because they're going to need more and more care. So we need to plan for that. We need to plan for more people, and we need to plan for more older people in the higher age ranges. Very fortunately, just before COVID. New Brunswick was funded with help from the Public Health Agency of Canada to do a variety of different Healthy Seniors pilot projects. And I was very fortunate to be able to be part of a multitude of different projects as lead, as co-lead, as collaborator. And there was about 45 different projects that were funded across the province. The funding has now all ended, but just some of the projects that I was involved with, and we're still working on analysis and presentation, included what we called NBPOM, which was the New Brunswick Brain Health Initiative, everything that Sue and Ken are talking about. And it looked at three main areas. One, do people care? Do older adults care? Two, what do our communities look like in terms of modifiable risk factors for cardiovascular disease and dementia? And three, can we do something in the way of physical exercise intervention, cognitive intervention that will make a difference? And are people going to be interested in it? And what we found was that the interest was astounding. There was one project called Synergic at Home, which was going to deliver via Zoom physical exercise 3 times a week, coupled with cognitive exercise 3 times a week, 90-minute sessions for 16 weeks. And this was in 2021, I think we started recruiting. This was all during COVID. So you couldn't recruit the normal way you would normally recruit. So we thought, well, let's go to CBC Radio, see what happens there. So we did a story. Within the next week, we had over 350 people contact us to say, how can I take part in this? So the interest was astounding. And people that are involved in research know that sometimes the recruitment is the most challenging part. So we were able to recruit very, very quickly. And many people were very disappointed that we didn't have a place for as many people who wanted to participate. What we did is we implemented it, the physical and cognitive intervention, for 16 weeks, 3 times a week. And we heard talk of why do people continue, will they continue? What I'll tell you is that 80% of all of the participants successfully completed that cognitive and physical exercise intervention via Zoom. I was very skeptical at the very beginning. I thought, people aren't going to do this. Like you go out to the walking tracks in January and they're packed because people are trying to make healthy changes in their behavior. By Valentine's Day, no one's there. I mean, it's just human nature. You just don't carry it on. But they carried it on. And one of the reasons why they carried it on is because we had one-on-one coaching. And it was all virtual. But there was accountability, and there was a relationship between that coach, the research assistant, and the intervention. They all didn't want it to end, but we had no ways to continue it. So that was one of the projects. The other project was an international project looking at improving the information that's available for patients, families, and healthcare providers on dementia. So this website, Forward with Dementia, is available in both French and English. It's available now, and it's being maintained at Waterloo University. But it's a very useful resource for a variety of people to give them more information about dementia. We were also able to embed what we called patient navigators in 5 primary care clinics across the province to see if they were able to help patients, families who had a diagnosis of dementia who were living in the community. Could that navigator work with that patient, that family, to try and support them at home? And the answer was absolutely. It makes a big difference. And the last one that we did in that had to do with patient navigators on an orthopedic unit following fractures. These projects were massive. There was national, international collaboration funded by the Healthy Seniors Pilot Project. My research time is funded through Research New Brunswick, through a clinical research scholarship. We had over 40 academic and clinical researchers all working together in multiple fields: engineering, medicine, epidemiology, you name it. We had physicians, all different health professionals. We engaged older adults in the projects. What matters to them? What makes a difference? We had over 20 students and trainees that came and were part of the projects with us. So hopefully we were able to inspire some of those students to, one, carry on with research, two, consider aging as an important part of their career path. And New Brunswick being the only official bilingual province in the country, these projects were both bilingual, and these projects were provincial in scope. So one of the challenges in research is always, you might be able to put something in place in an urban center, but how do you put it in a rural center? And if you put something in a rural center, how do you put it in an urban center? And we were able, through the virtual interface, largely of Synergic at Home, which was for NB-POM, but also with dementia navigation, to offer it in all areas of the province. And actually, we recruited people from all areas. Almost 40% were rural, involved in the projects. What did we learn? We learned that, one, older adults are really, really interested in doing something to make their life better. They just need help to do it. They need the inspiration, the opportunity. They need something that's doable and reasonable. They want to engage. And part of what we also learned as part of our research with NB-POM was that the way people want to hear about things is through trusted voices, friends, family, healthcare colleagues. But they want to be able to read about it in their own space, in their own time. So sending out new blasts of emails to whatever is probably not going to be very successful. But if you can incorporate all of this into friends, families, and healthcare providers, and then provide them the information either in paper or internet or whatever, then they're going to take their time to think about it. So we learned that. There also needs to be some built-in incentives. So there needs to be reasons why they want to go. There needs to be support for them to go. And there needs to be some rewards, so feedback coming back. Technology can help. I was, as the lead physician for Synergic at Home, I was petrified, to be honest, having older adults at risk for dementia doing 60 minutes of exercise 3 times a week in their own homes. And I thought, I don't know how this is going to go. I'm like, are they going to be able to do this? Is this going to be safe? What do you do? We followed the adverse events, and everything was extremely well managed. We were able to adjust the interventions accordingly. The other thing we learned is people caring for people matters. So we can put all the technology, all the science in place, but unless you've got people caring for people and helping them do what they need to do, we're probably going to falter. So we need to keep that people in there. Frailty matters, and what we need to do in our healthcare and social care systems is we need to prioritize. How do we encourage healthy aging, and how do we manage frailty? And I'll be optimistic and say reverse frailty. So what we need to do going forward for this complex problem, focus on the prevention of dementia and frailty, and much of it may be the same. We need to improve our fragmented care for older adults. We need to care for older adults through a frailty lens. So we need to start looking at people who are older in terms of the degree of frailty and focus our interventions based on the degree of frailty. And we need access, availability, and navigation for our health and social systems. So where I'm focusing now, from all the learnings in my clinical, administrative, and career, we have developed a research program for transitions in care for older adults. And what we're trying to focus on here is, again, a very collaborative, inclusive research program that we want to involve clinicians, academic clinical researchers, different allied health professionals, people from the community, nursing homes, hospitals, policymakers, because at the end of the day, it's government who sets policy. So they need to be part of this so we can all work together. And we need to include people, and the people that are affected and the people that it matters to. So as we move forward, we want to be able to continue to grow the research program, focusing on the areas that matter, so that when I am in need of care, and whatever it is, or any of us need of care, our families will be able to say, what a wonderful system we have for older adults in Atlantic Canada. The care is amazing. They're able to transition quickly, they're able to receive the care they need when they need it, and I feel supported, and so did my family. That's the ultimate goal, and we've got time to do that. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you. Thanks.
That I was unable to keep us quite on time, but I think we are going to move now, just before the Q&A, to have an opportunity to see a short video from Dr. Jasmine Ma. She is a researcher who worked with, sorry, I misplaced my notes, but I think with Dr. Rockwood, is that correct? Yeah. And she's sharing with us her 3-minute thesis, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but we do love to bring our leading researchers who are up and coming to the stage. So join us now for a quick video.
I work in the emergency department, and I'm going to tell you a secret. The hospital has a big blind spot, one that could affect any of us, and not for the better. So imagine this. You've just turned 65 years old. 1 out of every 4 Canadians will fall each year after the age of 65. And because falls are common, you are brought to the emergency department with a broken hip after a fall. This risk is even worse if you have Alzheimer's dementia. And your doctor asks you, why did you fall? Because you were going down your apartment stairs in a dimly lit hallway. But why do you live in an apartment that's accessible only by stairs if you have bad arthritis? Because you can't afford a better place to live. But why can't you afford a better place? Because your partner passed away last year and you lost their pension. But why couldn't you stay at home? Because it was located in a rural area and no one could help you with transportation and groceries. But why could nobody help you with transportation? Because your only child lives in Ontario and you lost contact with friends while caring for your ailing partner. And now, because no one is able to care for you and you have a broken hip, the hospital wants to know if you would consider long-term care placement. These are the social determinants of health. And as we get older, social connections, having a caregiver, and being able to navigate the healthcare system, these social factors become the reason that you can age at home in the community. And if you don't have these social supports, you are said to be socially vulnerable. And this is what my research is about. So we know in individuals with Alzheimer's disease, their medical conditions can independently predict health outcomes and utilization of healthcare resources. However, you can also predict an individual's health by looking at their social circumstances. So people who are lonely or socially isolated, who don't have education to navigate the healthcare services, or who live in a far neighborhood, or who experience economic instability, they have worse health outcomes. So there are two things that we don't know. One, how do you incorporate social vulnerability into a system that was designed for medicine? And two, once you identify socially vulnerable adults, what can be done to help them? In my research, I identify which of these many factors contribute the most to health outcomes. I have created a Nova Scotia Social Vulnerability Index using routinely collected data from home care in the community or from hospital. I then use medical statistics to show that the higher you score in the Social Vulnerability Index, the more likely you are to experience death, decline in function, decline in your cognition, worse subjective health, worse long-term care placement or higher long-term care placement, and more emergency department visits. More importantly, I use this information to identify when and where our clinicians can intervene to make sure that there are upstream supports to get you to a not socially vulnerable place, to prevent crisis situations, or once you're in hospital, how do I improve your social reserve to get you back to baseline and functioning in the community? All of this is with the goal of helping older adults with dementia and their caregivers live at home and age in the community with dignity. Thank you.
It's too bad she couldn't be with us today in person, but Dr. Ma did a great job with her 3-minute thesis. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. I'd like to invite you back on stage now as we get ready for our Q&A. I hope you're getting your questions bubbling. We'll have about 15 minutes, I think, for Q&A, but please don't fret if you have more questions. I'm sure the speakers will stick around for a little bit longer. I'd also like to invite Catherine McPherson to stage. She's going to help host our Q&A. Catherine is the Chief Operating Officer of Shanex. She joined Shanex in 2010 and has held operations leadership roles on both enhanced care and retirement living teams. In her current role as COO, Catherine supports Shanex and Parkland operations in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Ontario. Prior to joining Shanex, Catherine held program and project management positions in Nova Scotia's former district health authorities. Catherine currently serves on the Dalhousie University Board of Governors and has previously served on the IWK Health Centre Board of Directions. Catherine, join us for hosting the Q&A.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here this morning, surrounded by individuals and groups who care deeply about healthy aging and older adults. Thank you to Dalhousie University's Faculty of Medicine, and in particular to Catherine Ewell for hosting us this morning. And thank you to Dr. Howlett, Dr. Rockwood, and Dr. Jarrett, not only for your remarks this morning, but for your critically important work and leadership in this area. It is a privilege to serve older adults and to support individuals and communities to live well and age well. In the spring, as Catherine mentioned, Shanex made strategic investments in the future of healthy aging by establishing research chairs at Dalhousie University, the University of New Brunswick, and at Mount St. Vincent University. Here at Dal, this will create a Shanex chair in artificial intelligence and healthy aging, as well as a Shanex research lab in AI and healthy aging to be located in the Healthy Aging Research Hub in the CHEB. As a room full of maritime partners, we're together uniquely positioned to further advance the impact and application of such high-quality research, not just around the world, but even more importantly, right here at home. I know we're all looking forward to more discussion, and so we'd like to open the floor to questions. I would ask that you raise your hand if you have a question. We do have some roving microphones, I believe, that will come to you. Do we have the roving microphones? It's a small room. Okay, great. So if you speak up, I will perhaps repeat the questions into the microphones just so that everybody can hear. And perhaps I will start. Each of you spoke about a number of different initiatives that can be undertaken to impact frailty and wellness as we all age. if we think about the population as a whole, where is the right place to start? There are learnings from each of these research projects, but if we think about impacting the population writ large, where do we start? Dr. Rockwood, let's start with you.
I think you can hear me? Yeah. So I was standing because I'm a Newfoundland with a bad back. I bet you never heard of that. So I actually know where I'm starting because I was very fortunate to get the job as the Senior Medical Director of the Frailty and Elder Care Network for the province. And we look things over very carefully and have been very evidence-based in what we have done. And for two reasons, we're starting in the hospitals. Number one reason is that is where we most often see acceleration in the degree of frailty. People come in, and with ordinary care, they're much more likely to get frailer quicker than if they had frailty informed, or what we're trying to promote, frail-safe care. And so we're starting there because that's where the smoke and fire is. But the other reason to start there is because there's a pretty reasonable evidence base for what to do. And so what we're trying to do is to bring about changes that are small, but that help us harvest the lowest hanging fruit and see if we can build on that. Now, I told you about my grandfather, Anglican. I'm Anglican. I was brought up to resist change. So, that's how we roll. So I entirely was prepared for it, so I thought the resistance change that would come about for trying to mobilize patients early. I said, well, surely, God, no one still believes that they should be in bed because they're so sick they need some rest. But it turns out a lot of people do and are not shy about telling you. And that's not just the families. People in the staff who think, well, the poor dear, they need to stay there. And we know that bed rest is bad. This is long been known for, Hippocrates talked about it. But we really need to bring about the mobilization piece. And I learned a huge amount just trying to bring about a program where we could have patients up and walking around with hands-on assistance of 2 people twice a day. And every step of that, not every step they took, but everything we had to do, there was resistance from some quarter about. And so what we learned was to pay attention to where the resistance was coming from, what was there, and then see what we could do to mitigate that. Some of it was education, some of it was very clever administrative stuff that I'm no good at, but I work with a team of people who are very skilled at that. So where we started was in the hospital, picking the lowest hanging fruit. And by the way, if you wind up in hospital, or anyone that you know and love winds up in hospital, please, 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 if no one's getting them up and walking them within the first 24 hours, go ask about it.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Rockwood. So starting in hospital and starting with movement. Questions from the floor? Yes, at the back.
Just wondering what you can do as an individual, just to follow on that question. We know what we're starting to do in hospitals. What can you do as an individual in terms of what's the most effective thing in terms of prevention?
You want me? Okay. Sure. Great question. I think what we need to do as individuals and as a society is normalize and make the whole aging process something we embrace and something we can talk freely about and we can work together to enjoy. I find that a lot of the issues that older adults and their families, once there's frailty, once there's a crisis, the stuff is just not talked about. It's kind of secretive, and nobody really wants to, air the dirty laundry, let's say, or talk about these sensitive topics. But we need to be able to do it in a culturally safe, socially safe way. And I think that if we build support networks and support communities are supportive of aging and embrace aging, then it's going to be easier for individuals to jump on board too. But I think just a little bit of what I know, I think early on, exercise. I think building healthy exercise habits in young years will carry you through into your older years, but it's never too late to start. And you don't have to start by training for a marathon. You can start by going for a 15-minute, 5-minute walk and build on that. And really creating those environments where people want to do it together and feel safe doing it. And being supportive of one another and helping our neighbors and being there for people. Just those little things, you know, that I grew up with Mom running casseroles from one house to the other for whatever family crisis was happening in a household. And we don't see that very much anymore. And I think we need to start supporting each other, changing each other's light bulbs if we need help. Just those little things, because they all impact a person's ability to safely stay at home. Because they fall, because they get up on the wobbly chair to change the light bulb, right? So how do we do that better?
Thank you, Dr. Jarrett. Yes, right over here.
I did walk here this morning, so that was good. But how do we change the culture? How do we translate the knowledge we have? I am a researcher. I want to find out more. But what I don't want to do is get so far ahead that we don't translate the knowledge we already have. Is there anything that we could be doing better as clinicians, researchers, individuals to best understand what's already on your slides, what we know, the blue zones, that type of thinking, to change our culture here in North America that might make as much of an impact, like maybe leave the bacon, replace it with blueberries, you know what I mean?
This is live, right? I think I'll have a crack at that. I guess that one of the beauties of the STRONG trial that we describe is that if it works, and I'm really optimistic that it will, we're going to do a one-year intervention. I think that we can make the case, and we're going to try to translate the heck out of findings, right, and really disseminate this knowledge. And that even small changes that you can make that don't require a drug can actually have a big impact on health. People are always surprised at this. And I really do see a role for us to try and highlight something which is, it really is something that a lot of women, older women, are particularly challenged by, which is the idea of lifting weights. And it's something I started a couple of years ago. And I mean, I couldn't do a push-up to save my life. And, you know, now I can drop and do 30, no problem. So, you know, but like these things really, and they do help then with other things you want to do, like other activities, right? Cycling, running, walking, whatever. So I think trying to get the message out that if there was a pill that was as good as exercise, everyone would want it. And we are trying to get pills like that, and that's a whole new area of science. But in the meantime, you know, fitness, and including strength training, and it doesn't mean you're going to become muscle-bound or anything. There's a lot of misconceptions. I think if we get out there and demystify some of this, that we can hopefully have a really good impact.
If there was a drug that worked as well as exercise, has been proven to do for dementia prevention, they'd be charging like $50 billion a year for it, and not the paltry $56,000 US that they want to do now. So it's really important, I think, for the public to take up where the traditional approaches have let us down, and the prevention of late life dementia is one of those. And so the more that we have people who can engage in exercise, the better. And the exercise is not, you know, you don't have to go get the sweat on so you buy out the fancy clothes and stuff. Just a brisk walk or a walk to start with. And the impact is seen at 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, and it builds up from there. The other thing I think we need to do is keep the messaging really simple, right? Walking groups would be one way to go about it. Eat what you want, just eat less, sorry. But just as a way to start, and then it really becomes a virtuous cycle as opposed to trying to get going, which requires so much inertia to overcome being still.
And if I can add to that, what we learned in Synergic at home, You know, if you were a person who frequently went to the gym or frequently did workouts in groups, you're quite comfortable going and doing that. But if you're 62, 65, and you don't go to the gym, and that good life is just a sign in a parking lot beside a drugstore, the chances of you feeling welcome in there and comfortable in there is slim to none. So that's an impediment. And what we found with Synergic at Home is many of these folks were not physically active before they started. They enjoyed the privacy of their own home. So they could falter, they could get that one-on-one coaching, but by the end of it, some of them thought they might want to go towards a group or into a group. So I think we need to offer different opportunities based on personal choices of what you're comfortable with. Because it may just be I'm not crossing the good life threshold because I'm not going in a gym, or the walking track is too far away. So we need to think about what are options that that will work for them.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, just right here, sir.
Excuse me, I had a question here. Good morning. We're here from the Alzheimer's Society, and your talks were very encouraging because we just embarked on a 3-year pilot of a fitness program. My question to you is, how do we take it up from there for sustainability? So in Canada, there's so many promising pilots. What do you do next? And also for individuals that graduate from a program, how do you encourage that behavior change in a sustainable way after a program wraps up? Thank you.
Can I try that one first? So this is exactly the challenges we're having with the Healthy Seniors pilot projects in New Brunswick that were funded from the Public Health Agency of Canada. So while I can't speak to all of those projects, all of them had valuable learnings that could be incorporated in part or in whole into the system. This is the challenge. How do you get it into the system? Because then you need infrastructure and funding and change in order to get those programs in place. So that's why it's so important, I think, early on in projects to have policymakers there, government there, so that they're going to be able to see the value and help you fund it, because that's where they often fall apart, is my experience. So I would say, if it's a good project, don't give up. Keep trying. Yeah.
I think if we look at countries that have done this well, they've brought about small changes and nudges, everything from what would be the equivalent of a subsidy to a Y, to insisting that a new apartment building has things that nudge people to interact with each other and nudge people to engage. So the exercise room in the basement is not what you see in Sweden, for example. It's been incorporated into part of the lobby, so you can go by and see people working out as you go in and talk to them and such. These are small things, but it's going to be a series of small things that are done self-consciously.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwood, Dr. Jarrett, Dr. Howlett. Lots more conversation to occur, I think, on this topic, there's no question, but really appreciate your insights this morning, in particular around very simple things that we can take forward as leaders in this space: exercise, incremental changes, social connectedness, and I think, Dr. Jarrett, your last point around infrastructure and sustainability, and how we work together to make sure that those things are cemented across our population as we work to serve older adults and support healthy aging. So thank you to 3 of you this morning.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for hosting the Q&A. I think there's lots more questions, so perhaps after the event starts to clear out, we might get our speakers to stay around for a minute or two and answer your questions in person. I'd like to thank our speakers. One more round of applause for such a great panel. Now that almost wraps it up for today. I'd like to also ask you to join me in thanking once again our 3 sponsors today: Shanix, the QE2, and CBU, Cape Breton University. Thank you to our sponsors. We really, truly appreciate you taking the time to attend Breakthrough Breakfast. It's our pleasure to share and celebrate this groundbreaking research and medical innovation across a wide spectrum of medical fields that's happening at Dalhousie through this event series. We couldn't do this work without you. If you were thinking you were wishing you'd taken some notes, don't worry. We will be following up with all of our attendees with a little summary of this research area at Dal, and also we do have a videotape, a video recording available. Tape. What generation am I from? We will send out the link to the video recording as well. That will allow you to watch it again and again, or share it with your friends and start that incremental change that you hope happens. If you liked today's event, or if you have some suggestions for us, please feel free to reach out at any time, send us an email, or give us an old-fashioned phone call. And if you're interested in learning more about how you can help support medical research, we're available. If you've picked up the latest issue of our magazine Remedy, all of our contact information is located there. And I would encourage, if you enjoy this magazine, yes, an old-fashioned print magazine, and you aren't on the mailing list for that, please let us know as well, and we'll be sure to add you. It does come in a digital version for those of you who are a little more on the digital side. Our next Breakthrough Breakfast will be taking place in January, and it will have a focus on family medicine and healthy populations. We hope to see you there. On your way out, please take a mug if you want. Those mugs with the Breakthrough Breakfast, not the other ones. Those are the caterers. And someone at your table is welcome to take those centerpiece flowers if you like. There's someone at the back ready to wrap those for you on your way out. Thank you again, and have a lovely rest of your day.